everybody. Welcome
Hi.
to another edition of the Securing Success Show. Tracy Ninney is back with us. How are you feeling?
I'm good, thank you. I'm healing up nicely and feeling good, and I'm back to pickleball, so I'm very grateful. Very grateful it went well. Thanks.
The last two shows that we recorded, it was a little odd for us. Usually we're always together.
Yep.
2 weeks ago, Tracy was on her own
Stan Welch.
with Stan Welsh. And then last week I was by myself with Jennifer Schaefer, who's coming up soon. But I missed you.
I missed you too. We the play off each other and the questions was nice. I found myself going, okay, so what's next when I was talking to Stan? So I need you more than I realized.
Well, we are on, obviously, this is season two. I publicized that all over the place, but we are on episode 18. I think at the end of the day, we'll probably do 25 episodes in season two altogether, maybe more.
I'm
We're
pleased with
still,
that. Like, we didn't know where this was going to go when we first started and how long and how many. And I'm really grateful for the feedback we've been getting, and how well it's been going. I'm actually kind of surprised. I thought it was going to be boring as heck. So.
no, we're amazing.
Okay.
We are
Um,
amazing. Our show is amazing, and we are amazing together. And
we'll
we have
go with that.
amazing guests. And
We do have really amazing guests.
we have an amazing
Um,
producer.
yes, we have an exceptional producer. He doesn't like to be named. We call him he who will not be named.
No,
So, but he
he's
is.
out there now. He's
Is
okay.
he?
Hey,
Oh,
yeah,
okay, cool.
he's not
Yeah,
the
we
part
love
you credit.
Adam. Okay, good. I'm glad you added that because honestly, the ones we do by ourselves are such a mess, and we always have to go back to Adam to fix them. So thank you, Adam.
I know. Sometimes we have to record on our own, and it is
I did
brutal.
better than you did.
Oh, you did. The last two shows that I tried to do on my own were complete, utter failures and an embarrassment.
The
So
texting from you made me laugh so hard. I even took a picture, everybody, of the screen of Stan and I doing it, and I texted it to John just to dig the poke him a little bit more because I was able to do it. Anyways, okay, let's get back to it.
well, we got an
Um,
amazing show and a very, very cool guest.
we do have an exceptional guest. He, we use the word seasoned. He really is seasoned. He has done so many things in his career and his life, over 30 years. Whether you're looking at his military and law enforcement background or what he's done in retail private sector, he has moved up the ranks. Gap, Old Navy, and Banana Republic for over, I think, 20 years. I could be wrong. Currently, his title is Global Head of Security and Asset Protection, Investigations, Business Continuity, Safety, 3,500 stores, well over 109,000 associates. But his start in LP was successfully transitioning from the Army as a second lieutenant major. Thank you for your service. In LP training and development for Target. So I'm going to talk to him about that because, as you know, I'm really big on helping vets transition from government to private sector, and I want to hear what he has to say about that. His name is Chris Nelson. He's a former U.S. military, police, and combat veteran. He has seen some stuff, but his of service thing I've always really, really valued. He's a huge participant and involved with Habitat for Humanity, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and something called Safety Days that Old Navy has that I'd like to also learn more about that people can contribute to. He's well known for building teams. His ability to pull people together and get a message across and engage people is really well known. He's truly an inspiring leader. And he's been able to integrate safety with business continuity and resumption really successfully before it was what it is now. And that's something else I'm going to want to talk to him about. So with this announcement, elegant or not, I would like to bring Chris Nelson on. How'd I do?
Hi, team. What
Hi,
what a
Chris.
privilege to be here. You did great.
Oh, good.
Thank you so much.
We need sound
Absolutely.
effects where we can have like clapping. Maybe
No.
season three will have that.
No, I'm not doing that. I'm thinking in my head too much as it is. So, I mean it, Chris, thank you for your service and for all of the service that you provide now with your community outreach. It's a big deal, and a lot of people think they don't have time to do it. And in spite of the high level of responsibility that you have, you obviously do. So I'm impressed.
Well, thank you. It's been driven into me since I was a little guy, and my parents always taught me service, and to whom much is given, much is expected. And I've always got all the way back to my grandmother right in the back of my head here saying, "You doing the right thing, Mister? And don't
Oh,
get too fancy." And it's been a wonderful life so far, and I live in gratitude because I've been very fortunate.
I love
yeah,
it.
you've created a lot of your. I know you've had opportunity and stuff, but you've succeeded because of what you've put into it. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your sage advice and input for our listeners.
Wonderful. I hope I can add something.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we think that you will. I can tell you when I was an investigator, I remember that you were the director of investigations for Target. And
Yes.
I remember all of the different things that Target was doing. And I said, I want to work for Chris Nelson at Target, and it's just amazing all the stuff that you've been able to do when you just think about those days and then where you are today and just how the business has evolved. But, I think the one question that I've been really itching to ask you is, you have such a unique background, both from military and from the retail industry. Think back to the beginning on your first leadership assignment, and that obviously could have been in the military or retail, but how has that really changed? Like, how has your style changed? Has it always been around the same, or how has that evolved over the years?
Yeah, I think I've learned sometimes through the school of hard knocks. We all get punched in the nose when we're trying hard, but I try not to get punched in the nose twice, at least from the same place.
Good,
And I think
advice.
when I first started out, I was a lieutenant in the military police. My first assignment, I'm in Daegu, South Korea. I couldn't spell Daegu before I moved over there. And all of a sudden, I was in charge of 42 military policemen, and we were out doing law enforcement in a foreign country. And I quickly learned, my grandmother used to say you have two ears or in one mouth. So think about it. She was right. The more I listened, the more I took in. Now I knew the basics academically, intellectually. I knew I could. Okay, I understand what we're trying to do. But learning from people around me, and the biggest lesson I learned was from the NCOs, who said, you know what, LT, if you slow down and listen, we'll guide you, we'll teach you what we know, we'll take you there. Those that didn't slow down and listen, then sometimes they would just go, hey man, you're on your own. I did, and I learned so much. I still think of some of the folks that I worked with, Scott Templeton, Billy Cooper. They're people that just to this day, I remember what they taught me. I remember where they steered me, and they didn't have to. They could have just let me go out there and flail, but they didn't have to. And I feel a huge obligation to them. So I've tried really hard to listen. Now that's an aspiration sometimes. I'm trying hard to listen, but one of my things is if I get impatient, I'm always moving to act. And some of the lessons you have to continually remind yourself of is to say, hey, listen, there's greatness around you. We wouldn't be this good without greatness around you. Don't ever think it's you. And when you do that and you start to listen and then you apply what you've learned, you usually can figure it out. You don't get stumped a whole lot.
Yep. Great advice.
With the leadership in mind, you have teams and you transitioned from military to obviously private sector. How did you acclimate with taking orders versus taking direction, with giving direction versus giving orders? Listen to me, because when I help counsel vets and they're trying to transition in a private sector, one of the things I work through them is their presence in the interview, whether it be now on Zoom or in person. And so many people are afraid of hiring vets, not so much now, but well, it's still there. The prejudice is still there in terms
Yeah.
of their ability to take and give direction in the private sector way. How did you understand and learn that transition? And then how would you help someone wanting to transition to understand that?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, you're very wise to say, understand this is here. When I first walked in interviews, I thought, I've had this cool career in the military. This shouldn't be a negative. Now, maybe my experience in retail or whatever would be a negative. But you find there's a little bit of that bias, and we're all human beings, and we suffer from the human condition of bias and judgment and all that. But I think there's a couple things. One, understand what's going on. And I think one of the things I've learned, I think it's Simon Sinek who says start with a why. Sorry, Simon, if it wasn't you, but I think that's you.
I think it is. What's your
and
why?
That's something that resonates with me. And I heard a story. I was actually just a second lieutenant when I heard the story. And it's kind of this simple old story about these people are working in a rock quarry, and they go up to one group of people and they say, hey, what are you guys doing here? What's going on? And they say, we're taking big rocks and banging them into little rocks. I said, okay, it seems kind of like unfulfilling work. And they go to the next group and they say, hey, what are you guys doing? And they say, oh, we're part of a team that's building a cathedral. If you start with a why and you have the purpose, all of a sudden things get better. Now, as a leader, I want to apply that, and I really hope that everybody in my organization, that's my aspiration, they're building a cathedral. They're not just breaking rocks. Now, some days you feel like, oh my God, can they throw another rock at me to break? But more often than not, it's not. But I think too, you as a leader need to understand that about the organization. So what are we trying to do? The military is very mission oriented, and sometimes it can be more severe than what we face here. Although these days we face severe things in the stores, right? But if you understand the why and then you apply that, make no mistake about it. You can talk to some of the folks that work for me in year one, and one of my favorite people in the world, Brad Brecky, was my first boss. He sanded a lot of edges off Chris Nelson to get him down that road, but he had enough faith in me. And then you understand that as a leader, he had enough faith in me to say, hey, knucklehead, think about it this way. Maybe I was doing the right thing, but I wasn't doing it the right way. But the more I started to understand what we're trying to accomplish as an organization, the more I could adapt to it. And the thing I would say is understand that as a military person, but also understand that I think the military gives you this superpower to adapt. You can throw so much at people coming out of the military because, quite frankly, they've had to do that. And you don't have the option to go on, I'm out, I quit, I don't want to do that. You're faced with real life situations, and you have to develop real life solutions or there's major trouble. And the ability to do that, I think, is something you bring. Just to understand that sometimes people, when we talk too much military jargon or we're too set in our ways, that can take you down the wrong road, and it doesn't make you as influential as you'd like. And when you're a leader, taking care of your team and being influential are really why you're there.
Thank you.
Perfect. One of the things, and I know we've probably all seen this, is that folks in the industry that are coming up, it seems like younger folks are in positions of a lot of authority at a much younger age than it seemed like in the past. And so a lot of life experience dictates your leadership style and the advice that you get and the mentors that you have along the way. But if you had to say, and you look back on your career and you have to give like a piece of leadership advice to the younger leaders that are out there. Now, I'm not sure if younger leaders is politically correct, but you understand what I'm saying is that
yes,
they may not have the years of service that maybe in the past you had to be in the industry for 20 years before you were a VP. It just doesn't happen that way anymore. What would you give advice to those folks that really haven't maybe seen everything yet, but are in positions of great authority.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that frustrates me the most, and some of my team will say, Chris got on me for that when they say, well, I've never done that before, so I'm not sure what to do. Now, the reality is that may be a truthful statement, but I think that what I've learned sometimes through the School of Hard Knocks is when you stop and you listen and you learn, you start to see what's coming at you. You start to see the scenario. You have to be intellectually honest enough to just put yourself in that stop mode and say, what's going on around here and what do we need to accomplish? I think sometimes as we're new leaders, perfection rarely exists, but we've got to avoid this thought that perfection gets in the way of being really good. And you have to act. I have a saying with my team that we deal with innovation, and I really wanted to push that. It's like, when you come into a leadership position and you have a problem, you can do one of three things. You can do the right thing, you can do the wrong thing, or you can do nothing. And if you do one of those first two in good faith, now you can't be illegal, immoral, or unethical. Those are the ground rules, right? But if you do one of those first two, then I've got your back, and I have to have your back. And my leaders have to have my back if we are going to be a successful organization.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important thing. And then the other thing I would say, and I've used this with my kids a lot too, who are now, young professionals too, is, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you are probably right. And if you really think about that a little bit, there's a cycle that the smart psychologists will use that, you have your thoughts lead to your beliefs lead to your behaviors. Well, be careful with that trifecta. Because if I think I'm going to fail, if I think I'm going to go in there and there's no way I'm going to convince the leadership team that this is what we should do, guess what? Probably going to happen. And, I think I got a pretty good poker face, but the reality is, if I'm going in there saying, here's what I think we ought to do, I wouldn't believe in me. So you really have to think about that and put yourself in that position. Now, don't go doing something silly and saying, I think I can be the CFO tomorrow, because that's not who I am. But the reality is, understand that what you think is going to propel you to whether or not you're successful. And I found that happens.
That's great advice. The knowing what's going on around you is a big one. That sensory acuity,
Yes.
like you don't pick up on those subtle cues as a leader, is very detrimental.
And I think that knowing what's going on around you is one of the hardest things in leadership. Is leadership isn't really just about you. It's about the team and the environment. And I think sometimes we go to the you.
Yeah.
And they say, here's what I want to do. And, you hear leaders that talk about I a lot. You hear politicians, well, I did this. And you just, come on, man. Any leader worth their salt is more successful with the sum total of their team than they are just with themselves.
So speaking of the you, one of the questions we had was personal branding. What is personal, and this is different than I know the question that John and I usually ask, but what do you perceive personal branding as, and how important is it? I just had a coughing attack, so excuse my voice. And how important is it in kind of career development and taking the steps to build one?
Yeah, I think it is huge. That is an absolute key. In fact, I watched on one of your last ones. It was my friend Keith White, who was also a mentor and a leader of mine. And if you ever want to know about personal brand, go look at Keith White, spend 10 minutes with him, and you understand what he's about. And that was one of the beauties of working for Keith for so many years, is trying to emulate that and getting examples. And I think I would characterize it as, when I do a final interview, I just did one yesterday, final interview. So this is, our top candidate, but we want to make sure we're going to do the right thing. The most important thing that I'm after during that is, does the candidate know who they are? And this can become hard, because I don't want you to be who Chris wants you to be. I want you to know who you are. And when you know who you are, that's going to put us ahead. The technical chops are generally there. Those I have found throughout my career. It is not super hard to find a really cool, great investigator or somebody who's got a lot of experience. But do they know who they are? And what I found, particularly over the last 5 years, is the world's going to throw us all kinds of curveballs, challenges. It's almost routine now that something big is going to happen, right? So you're going to get challenged. And if you don't know your strengths and opportunities and you're not comfortable in your own skin, when a challenge comes, it just exacerbates that. And now you've got somebody who's, out there and they're not sure who they are. If they're not sure who they are, how can they step in and help the team? So I think that's really important. It makes us so much stronger. And, I think it's important for all of us to kind of lean into that. So spend a little bit of time. You don't have to do it every day or whatever, but do we do this sort of inventory of what we're really good at and what we're not good at? Now, if I'm not good at something, I'm not the most patient man in the world. That's okay. I understand that. I have people around me who go, "Hey, dude, you're doing that patience thing again." That helps steer me, but it also makes me more effective if I do that inventory. If I don't think about it, if I'm just running to say, what does my boss want today? Then I don't think I'm doing her the service that she deserves and not giving her all that I can. And I think, doing that really puts you in a good position to understand, first, where are you going to soar? And then two, where do you have to develop sort of a strategy to say, I'm not great at that, so how do I overcome that so that I can be better for the team? And I think that's important. Once you do it, you have to live it. You got to be honest with yourself. Nobody knows. If I didn't tell anybody that I can be impatient, then who would know until I wasn't patient? But those are the kinds of things that I think you need to do, and that branding comes out. We know Keith White's brand because Keith White lives it. Keith White knows what he's great at, and he probably also knows what he's working on. And that's something that I think we should all emulate.
One of the things I love about Keith White the most, and I hope this doesn't get me in trouble, he is so unapologetically Keith White.
Yeah.
Like, he is so authentic, and his spirit is so big and so bold, and he's so embracing. And you do know it because it is who he is. And there's other people that are more subtle about it or maybe quieter about it. But Keith's ability to embrace knowing who he is one of my favorite things about him.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's something we can all learn from. I think that's, the thing is, you don't have to be, I always joke with people when I left the house to go into the military, and my dad was joking with me. He said, if you want to create genius in the organization, Chris, there's two ways to do it. One, you can be a genius yourself, and two, you surround yourself with genius. He said you might want to go with the latter. Now he was just joking. My dad loves me, and he's one of my greatest supporters. But the reality is, it's sage advice is to know what's around you and then take it in. And if we can learn that from a Keith, or I can learn the patience and the innovation that a Brad Brecky uses as he guides a team through, I don't think there's any bonus points for originality. If I apply it to my team now, they're better off for it, right?
That's kind of a great segue to my next question, and that is, the industry is changing so quickly. When you look at it, whether it's organized crime or the convergence of in-store and online channels and things like that, how important is that creative aspect to driving technology and innovation and doing things differently in order to be able to keep up with how loss is coming at us as retailers? How important is that for you and your team?
Yeah, it is huge. I think there's two sides to it. One is, whether we like it or not, things are changing. The level of violence in stores right now is at an all-time high. And, we talk about the level it's at, or, we're a little bit better than last year, but take it over a long scope. There's things that are different. So, when I first started in the industry, we didn't go down the road of saying we're all about safety, or what I call safeness. Again, I stole that from Brad, so sorry, but safeness is this freedom from harm, the sort of the crimes against people, for getting away from that active threats of violence, escalated customer service things, all of that stuff. That is our number one priority now. Total loss is number two, and trust me, it's important, and we're not letting it slip or anything like that, but that's important. So we've got to continue to go down the road to say, what can we do? And then, if you go back to what I was saying before, is stop, look around. What do you have? What do you know? One of the things that we've done is we have this theory called layers of protection. Again, not the most creative, but remember, I'm an AP, I'm not in marketing. But the reality is, what we realized as this came up is, we used to protect the four walls because we would do that in the name of total loss or theft or shrink, right? Don't take it from here. And if you go down to JC Penney's and take it, sorry, but that happens. That's not going to work anymore. And so, one of the things we've realized is we have all these skill sets and all these partnerships, and really the ability to lean in and tap into other partners. I work with the government affairs department a lot on how do we help create a safer community, safer ORC laws, things of that nature, that are going to help the community. How do we work with the city of San Francisco to create a safer San Francisco as we bring people back into the office and so forth? One of their biggest concerns is, gosh, is it safe for me to ride the BART? Isn't it safe for me to walk to the office? Well, I have an obligation to do everything in my power to try and make it so, and make it safe. So reaching out to them, we've had relationships in the past. So we had some of these skills, but now we're using them in a little bit different fashion. We're working in a broad way. We have a San Francisco Safety Alliance. We're getting all the CSOs together to say, what else can we do to help the city stay safe? Because, by the way, if we do that and the community is safer, now we worry about selling jeans and t-shirts. That's why we want to be here. That's what we want to do. And we can add to that. So, you start with what did I know? What did we know? What could we apply? But then start thinking about the nature of the problem. It's not a Gap problem or a Victoria's Secret problem or even a Salesforce or a Google problem. It is a problem for the community. So what do we have that we can lean in? And it's uncomfortable a little bit because now we got this bigger sphere that we're trying to make sure that we're angling. And if we do it right, it helps. And we found in many, many cases in LA and New York City and San Francisco and Chicago, when we do this and we do it earnestly, all of a sudden we're making those communities a little bit safer than they were before. And oh, by the way, commerce flourishes then.
I think that's one of the things that people from the outside in don't realize about retail leaders in the protection leaders, is the amount of work that goes into not just the four walls of safety or, protecting from loss and things like that, but making sure the entire community is safe, meeting with community leaders, not just the police. There's a lot of effort that goes into that. I don't think it gets recognized the way it should.
Yeah, and it's funny because COVID taught us that in this weird way. This silver lining was none of us had a playbook for a pandemic. Smart as not me, my peers, all that. There was not this, oh, here's what you do, Chris. So what we learned really quickly is putting our heads together. We were a lot smarter than we were solo. And oh, by the way, reacting to a pandemic is not a competitive thing. That is something we all are trying to get through as humans and community and et cetera. So that just helped propel us to say, you know what, there's some things we're not going to tell, Ross or one of our competitors, hey, here's how we're pricing denim, or here's what, that's competitive. I got it. I understand. But if we can make the street safer that we're both on, amen.
I agree. I saw some pretty amazing relationships forged and people reaching out that wouldn't have otherwise during the pandemic. A lot of people who had been with companies that were a little bit like islands that were very independent and unto themselves. I watched and I helped collaborate some of it. And it was very fulfilling for me because I didn't have a whole lot to do right then, right? As a recruiter. There wasn't much going on, but I was able to collaborate some roundtables and pull stuff together. And boy, I learned a lot. I had done some business resumption stuff before and continuity searches, but the stuff that got pulled together during COVID was exceptional.
Yeah.
A lot of work went into it. And the 24-hour days you guys had to do were crazy. It was just crazy.
I think they were 25 hours, but
you're right. But kudos to everybody that handled that because it was a crazy time. You kind of touched on this when we first started talking about being of service and having that grandma. What was grandma's name?
Elida.
Ooh, shout out to Elida.
Yeah, Grandma Elida Ryan was about 5 foot tall, 98 pounds soaking wet, but with a wooden spoon in her hand, she was a force. And I needed it sometimes, trust me.
My little Italian grandma was kind of similar. She was.
Yeah, it's like don't let that fool you.
With that in mind, whether it be personal, social, community, or professional, it's kind of, what does this mean to you question, but what do you hope to be remembered by and for within the impact you had on the company or in the wider community? What are your whys?
Yeah, I mean, I think my day-to-day is I think it is an honor to be able to protect Gap Inc. And I'm being a little bold there because I don't protect Gap Inc. The organization that I lead and hopefully guide the right way does. But to me, that's a huge thing and it's worthy of protection. And I think many of my peers think the same thing. I think one of my favorite moments in life is when you're going to something and somebody will come up to you and go, hey, you're Chris. Yeah, I'm Chris. Am I in trouble? What'd I do? And then they'll say, I remember way back, I saw you speak at so-and-so, or you were in a store and you said this, and I remembered it and I've used it. And when I get those kind of comments, it's like my heart melts because then, that's what I think it is about. I think I've been really lucky. I'm not BSing. I'm not trying to say the right thing there. I've just plain been lucky. I'm grateful every day. But then you have the responsibility. So, okay, smart guy, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to make an impact? And, I've been really, really lucky. I've received so much from others. I talked about some of the people that I've learned from. I still apply. If I can just return that favor in some small way, it doesn't have to be, put a man on the moon with Chris's advice. But if somebody stayed safer or it helped them get through a leadership issue, that's where I think it's important. And my goal is always, I'm striving to leave this place just a little bit better than when I got here. And those are the things. It's an aspiration some days, and you're pounding rocks and making them into little ones some days, but most days you're not. And that's what it stands for. And I think for me, I keep going back to my family, but that was really this groundswell for me is like, there's these legacy items that my family has left me with, and whether I want to or not, I'm not going to be able to forget them. So my parents always held me to the standard of, did you do your best? And you think about that standard, that is a mean standard, because you could win the race, get an A- on the paper, be the best trumpet player, whatever you could have the best presentation here. That wasn't the standard. The standard was, hey, mister, did you do your best? So it just always taught me, and they weren't mean. They were unbelievably supportive and loving, but that always stuck with me is like, you know what? the only person that can answer that question is me. So I've got to come back to myself and be reflective, like we were talking about before, take an inventory. Or was that really my best? Gosh, it seemed like it went well. And really, every time that something doesn't go quite the way I wanted to, I can go back and reflect and go, you know what? Here's something I could have done better. I got that within me. I mean, I'm not going to be the next CFO. I'm not going to be NFL quarterback. I'm not going to play for the New York Philharmonic. But am I doing my best? So that's always stuck with me. I always give my parents a hard time to say, you just stay in my head. You're in my head all the time. And then the other thing, and it really came from Grandma Lyda, is when I would leave the house, particularly as I go out older, like high school and college, she would say, remember where you came from, young man.
Ooh.
And it's like, oh, Grandma, come on. Because once again, they're always with me. And what she was saying was, the family came from very modest beginnings. They immigrated over from Norway, Finland, Italy, and they were miners up on the Iron Range of Minnesota, and had a hard life, but they loved life, and they slowly got everybody going. My parents were the first ones to go to college, things like that. But she was reminding me that I'm not just out there on my own. I'm out there with people behind me who not only love me and support me, but they have expectations of me. And that's always driven me. And I think that any of that I can impart on others, my kids have to listen to me, right? But when I'm working in an environment, if I can get some of those lessons across, it's really helped me. And when I talk about making it just a little bit better than I found it, hopefully it can help those around me.
What a wonderful answer. Thank you. Thank you. Wow.
Chris is a real gentleman. And I think that, folks that are tuned into this particular show are just going to get a ton of great nuggets of advice, information, and wisdom from Chris. So we could not thank you enough for being a guest on our show.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
So
this
much.
is really cool. And also thank you for doing it. Because this isn't always the kind of thing where, gosh, you know what I need to do? I need to reach out to somebody who can have a podcast and teach us all things. Having this there for our organizations. I don't know that this, and you guys have been around a little bit, maybe not as long as me, but I don't remember this sort of tool and resource existing when I first came in. And boy, would I have loved it.
Yeah. That's why we created it. Yeah. We were talking one day, I'm seeing a lot of people retire or pass, and I'm seeing candidates come to me and say, I don't know how to get promoted. How do I do this? Do you have somebody I can talk to? And I thought, and I've been using this word, tribal knowledge. Like, we are losing access to so much tribal knowledge because of the succession plan of careers, right? And John and I were talking, and I said, I just came up with, let's do a podcast. It's going to be of service to the industry, like no sponsors. There's no money involved. This is our time and our hearts, because we really care. We really, really care about helping people in the industry, and your knowledge and your humbleness and your authenticity. That's what we're looking to capture for generations to come. So thank you so much for spending your time with us.
Awesome. We're in a great industry, and heaven knows we work hard. And sometimes it doesn't feel like we're making great progress, but I think we are. And I think stuff like this and these group efforts that we've all been a part of, they're showing. So thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, that wraps up another show. And thank you so much, Chris, for being an amazing guest. Thank you for everything you do, and especially what you do for the industry. You're truly an icon in the industry. So thank you so much.
Thanks. It's been wonderful.
All right, everybody.
Be good.
That's a wrap on today's show. So for everybody watching, look forward to seeing you next time on the Securing Success Show. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.